Join as we learn Chumash for today, which is the fifth Torah reading, for Thursday, the fifth Torah reading of Parshas Yisro. Yesterday we began as Moshe tells the Jewish people, and God tells Moshe to prepare the Jewish people for the giving of the Torah, calling them his cherished, treasured nation, as well as calling them a kingdom of nobles. And today we continue as Moshe gets the Jewish people ready for the giving of the Torah. Chapter 19, verse 7. Vayovei Moshe, and Moshe came, Vayikra leziknei hayam, and he summons the elders of the people, Vayasam lefneim es kol hadvarim haela, and he presented before them all these words that God has said, Asher tzivo Hashem, that God has commanded him. Verse 8. Vayanu kolom yachdav, and all the people responded together. Vayomru, and they said, Kol asher diber Hashem nasa, everything that God said we shall do. Vayoshev Moshe divrei al Hashem, and Moshe conveyed the words of God, words of the people back to God. Vayoshev Moshe as divrei ha'am, that means he went back to God not that same day, but yom ha'mochres, on the next day, shu yom ha'shlishi, which was now the third day of Sivan. Sharei b'ashkama, only went in the morning. V'chitzar chaya Moshe l'ashev, and the question is, why did Moshe even have to go back and tell God? Alaba akasav lalamedcha, the Torah tells us over here, derech eretz mi-Moshe, to teach us the way of respect from Moshe. He doesn't say, since he knows anyway, why should I tell him? I don't have to respond. But because he was told to God in a question, so too Moshe answered him. So therefore, Moshe taught us how we have to respect that if somebody asks you something, you don't say, well, they're going to find out anyway. You should go tell them and respond to them. Verse 9. And God said to Moshe, I am about to come to you in the thickness of the cloud, so that all the people will hear, when I speak to you, and they will believe in you, as well as in the prophets that succeed you for eternity. And Moshe then reported the people's response to God. Rashi ba'ava onan. What does it mean in the thickness? B'ma'ave onan, the thickness of the cloud. V'zo arafel. This is later on when we find the terminology. Arafel means thickness of the cloud. V'gam b'cha. What does it mean? And also, as we learned previously, whenever the Torah uses the word also, it's coming to include somebody that's not mentioned. Gam b'nevim abayim acharecha, including the prophets that will come after you. Vayagid Moshe, Moshe continues. When does he continue? B'yom ha'mochres, the following day, Shuravi l'chedesh, which is Wednesday. As divrei ha'am, the words of the nation, Moshe is responding to God, tshuva al davar zeh, an answer to this, that God tells Moshe, here I come to you in the thickness of the cloud that the people should hear. So what's the response? Shamaiti mehem. What's he responding to? I heard from them, she'ein ritzayim l'shmei mimcha. I heard that they don't want to hear it through any messenger. Why don't they want to hear any messenger? And why? Because you can't compare listening to a messenger than hearing it from the king himself. And therefore they continue to say, they want to see the king himself. It shouldn't be only through Moshe. But all the people want to be able to see the greatness of God. And therefore, as the Jewish people said, Le'enei kalaham, as it says, to the eyes of all the people, that God, they want to see, all of them want to experience that godly presence. And therefore, as God responds, so God said, if that's the case, that the Jewish people want to see it, they want to see the king, they're the ones that they want to be able to see the king himself. They don't want it to get it through a messenger. Then what do they have to do? Go to the people. And they have to sanctify themselves. They have to prepare themselves. Not only today, and tomorrow. And they should wash their clothes, ritually immerse their clothes. Rashi. If that's what they really want, that they want me to talk to them in the highest level, then they need a higher level of holiness. And therefore, go to the people, and get them ready. They should prepare themselves today, the fourth day and the fifth day of the month. They should prepare themselves for the giving of the Torah. Verse 11, they should be ready. They should be ready for the third day. Because what's going to happen on the third day? Because then on the third day, which will be the time of the 6th of Sivan, Yered Hashem leini kol ha'om, God will come down in front of all the people. Al Har Sinai, on Mount Sinai. V'hoyu nechoinim, verse 11, Rashi. What does it mean to be prepared? Muvdalim Isha, they're going to have to separate themselves from their wives. L'yom hashlishi, the third day of preparation. Shushisha b'chodesh, which would be the 6th of the month. Ubechamisha, and on the 5th, the day before that, Bana Moshe Mizbeach, Moshe built the altar, Tachas Ahar, beneath the mountain, Ushtem Matzev, and 12 different monuments. All this is already discussed, will be discussed in the upcoming Torah readings of Mishpatim. You're going to tell me, didn't this happen before the Torah was given, before the Ten Commandments were given? As Rashi already said before, there is no chronological order in the Torah. Things that are mentioned later happened earlier, things that are mentioned earlier can happen later, and therefore the Torah specifically does not put things in chronological order. What does it mean before all the people? Malamid, it teaches us, to the eyes of all the people, but there were no blind people, everybody was healed. The next instruction was, verse 12, and then you shall make a boundary for the people around the nation, Saviv, around the mountain. Lamer saying, Hishamru lachem, be careful, do not come Allah Yispahar about going up onto the mountain. Nobody should touch it. The one who touches even the edge of it, whoever comes close, whoever ascends the mountain, Mois Yumas, will be liable of capital punishment. Vigbalta, what does it mean? Vigbalta, making a boundary. Kavalem tchumim, he made a boundary, l'simim, for a sign. Shal yikrivum in hagvul v'hala, do not go after this boundary and onward. Lamar, saying, hagvul omer lahem, this boundary tells you, this boundary tells you, be careful from getting close from here onward. And you will tell them as follows, and you will warn them. Not only does if somebody goes on the height of the mountain, but even if he just touches the edge of it, then he will be liable of capital punishment. Verse 13, no hand shall touch it, because they will be stoned. Or will be thrown off, he'll be cast down. Im behema, whether it's an animal, im ish, whether it's a man, lo yichya, will not survive, will not live. When the ram's horn sounds a long blast, only then may they ascend the mountain. Rashi, Yada Yada, Mikan, from here we learn, why does it talk about the terminology? A double terminology, will be stoned and be cast down. It teaches us the chol and the skull, and any time capital punishment was done, that the person was thrown down, that first they were pushed down, they were cast down, from the roof of the place where they would cast the person down, where they would stone them from. How tall was it? It was tall, 2 stories high, as it's discussed in the tractate of Sanhedrin. And if the person would not die because of being cast down, only then would they stone him as well. Yirada, Yushluch lamata baritz, was thrown down to the ground, as it says, Yara bayam, like we learned previously, that the Egyptians were thrown into the sea. When that long blast of the shofar, a long blast, that will be a sign that now the divine presence has left the mountain. Once the cessation of the sound it starts, that means there's no longer a sound of the shofar. That means that the divine presence has left the mountain. Then then they're allowed to go up onto the mountain. Hayovel, what does it mean, Hayovel? Why does he call the shofar here the Yovel? Who shofar shel ayil, this is a ram's horn. Shekein be'arvav yakelon ledachra yuvla. This is because in the Arab lands they would call a ram yuvla. This was the shofar of the ram of Isaac that was there bound by the bond of Isaac. Verse 14, Vayered Moshe minahar, and Moshe came down the mountain elam to the people, Vayekadesh etza'am, and he prepared them, he sanctified them, Vayechapsu esimloisam, they ritually washed their clothing. Minahar elaham, Melamed, it teaches us, as soon as he came down the mountain, he quickly went to do his business to help the Jewish people. Elaminahar elaham, he didn't go deal with whatever he had to do, with other issues, for things for himself. He was completely subservient to taking care of the needs of the Jewish people. Elahar, minahar, elam, straight to the Jewish people. Verse 15, and he told the people, hey, you should prepare yourselves now for a 3-day period. Al tikshu al isha, do not approach a woman. Verse 15, Moshe was telling them now on the 3rd day, meaning the 3 days, at the end of 3 days, this would be the 4th day from the preparations. And from here the rabbis learned that Moshe added a day on his own. According to Rabbi Yossi, that says the Torah was given on the 7th of Sivan. However, according to the opinion that it was given on the 6th of Sivan, Moshe did not add any days. And over here the word lishleishes yamim means on the 3rd day. So over here we have 2 opinions. What this word, 3 days, does it mean to the end of 3 days? That means 1, 2, and 3 from now, and therefore the Torah was given on the 7th of Sivan. So that means the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th, and then on the 7th the Torah was given, and Moshe added 1 day on his own. Or does he mean the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th, and at the end of the 6th, meaning at the end of the 3rd day, that's when the Torah would be given. Al tikshu al isha. Kol gimel yimel ayam, all these 3 days, kadesh yinashim tevelis layem ashlishi v'tiana teiras lekabel ha-teira, sheim sham shebtech gimel yamim, shem tiflet isha shiv chazer lachvot filas v'sachzer v'titma. These 3 days, they should not engage in marital relations together with their wives, because that the women should also be pure when it comes to get the Torah, because if they were to be together with their wife within these 3 days, there's a concern that they may become tamei, and therefore they have to again ritually purify themselves. And therefore, however, once 3 days passes, and therefore, because then it's not considered something which is viable, and once it's not viable, it's considered pure, and therefore it doesn't make the person impure whoever it disseminates from. Verse 16. Verse 16. And it was on the 3rd day. Now that they prepared themselves for 3 days, the Torah tells us we prepare for the giving of the Torah. And it was on the 3rd day. Early in the morning. And there was a thunder and lightning sounds. Cloud on the mountain. And there was extremely loud blast of a ram's horn. And all the people trembled that were encamped there. Rashi b'yesa baker in the morning, melamed shehigdim al yadam, that God came early. Mashein derech basar v'dam lasis ken she'arav mamtin l'talmid. This is not usual that the teacher should be waiting for the student to come, but over here God came there early, waiting for the Jewish people. This is what we find that the prophet Ezekiel talks about. That God, the prophet says that God tells the Jewish people, "Kum tseil abika." Come out to the valley and I'll speak to you. And I went out to the valley to speak to God, and God was already there, meaning using the humility that God got there before the Jewish people. God got there before the prophets talking to him. Verse 17, Moshe led the people out of the camp towards God, from the camp, and they took their places at the foot of the mountain. What does it mean, towards God? Why does it mean that Moshe took them out towards God? Magid, it comes to teach us that the Shechina went out, the divine presence went out to greet the Jewish people, like when the groom leaves the chuppah or stands to greet the bride. As it says, God came from Sinai. Came to Sinai, that he came from Sinai to greet the Jewish people as they were coming, as a groom comes to greet the bride. Besachtis ahar, on the foot of the mountain. Lefi pshutei, simple interpretation. Miraglei ahar. Midrashe. However, the Medrash says over here, God was saying, the Torah is telling us something deeper. Shenitla sha'or mimkoimei, that the actual mountain was removed from its place. V'nichba alei kegigis, and was held over the Jewish people like a pot. Like a pot that was holding on top of them. V'omar, and he said, Im Yisrael yekabelu satorah, if the Jewish people accept the Torah, mutav, good. But however, if you refuse to accept the Torah, I will make the world back into nothingness. Over here, actually, if we look later on, and this is why the Jewish people, as we see in the time of Esther, the Kimu v'kiblu HaYehudim, the Megillah says that the Jewish people accepted and did. The Jews accepted and did meaning they accepted what they already accepted previously, that during the time of the giving of the Torah, it was forced upon them. God said, if you don't accept it, I drop the mountain on you. However, in the time of Esther is when they accepted it willingly, even though it was under the greatest persecution, and as explained in Chassidus, that only during that time of persecution was revealed by the Jewish people that great light, that pure oil, that they were able to achieve a level that was even beyond the level of the giving of the Torah. Verse 18. V'har Sinai oshen kulei b'pnei asher yared elav Hashem. And the whole Mount Sinai was in smoke because God has descended upon it. Vayal upon it in ba'esh fire. Vayal oshonai, and the smoke rose up ka'oshen akifsham, like the smoke of a lime kiln. Vayecharat kol ha'or mi'od, and the entire mountain quaked violently. Oshen kulei, Rashi. This word oshan here, meaning it is a noun meaning the entire thing was in smoke, when not the word smoking. It doesn't mean that smoke, it was smoke as a noun, but a verb, it was smoking. Something that was happening. Every time it's shon, when it's smoke, that's a noun. But in this case, it's oshan, that it was smoking. Hakivshan, what is a kivshan? Like seed of a lime kiln. I would think will be like this kiln and not more. That therefore the Torah continues to say the words in the book of Deuteronomy. It says was burning fire ad lev hashamayim, until the heart of the heaven. So then why does it tell me like a kiln? The Torah uses terminology that the ear should be able to understand. The Torah gives the human beings that's studying the Torah definitions that they should be able to understand and relate to. So too we find in Hosea, for example, like a lion that roars, or one that gives a lion, the Torah continuously uses terminologies for the human being, what it's able to understand and listen to, what the ear is able to hear and understand and comprehend. So too we find in Hezekiel uses the terminology that his voice was like loud water. And is God's voice like water? But the only reason why he compares it to water is only that we should be able to have some type of relationship, some type of inkling and understanding of what was going on in this larger-than-life type of way. So therefore the Torah uses these metaphorical ways to be able to give us the ability to understand it. Verse 19. And the sound of the ram's horn increasingly louder, ma'od, very loud. Moshe yedaber, Moshe would speak, v'likim yanenu bekoil. And God responded by voice, by amplifying Moses' voice. As Rashi explains, Moshe hoilich v'chazik ma'od. Generally, minig hedyet, an ordinary person, kol zman shu marich l'tkoya, a regular person, the longer he blows, koil imachlesh v'koya, his voice continues to get softer. Avol kan, when it comes to God, the voice was getting louder and louder. Why does the Torah use this terminology? Why does it have it this way? That's his name. Why did God start off soft and only get loud? So that they should not all of a sudden get shocked and be thrown off. So it starts off that they should get used to what their ear is able to hear. And then as it progressed, it got louder and louder. Moshe yedaber. When Moshe was talking, we're talking about the last 8 commandments, because the first 2 commandments God said himself. So the last 8 commandments that Moshe said, Moshe would speak it and tell the Jewish people, because they heard from God only the first 2 of Anoichi and Messiah. God would help. Would give him the strength that his voice should be strong and should be able to penetrate, that everybody should be able to hear it. Yana bekel. What does it mean? Yanenu bekel. Respond. God responded. What does that mean? Yanenu al dvar hakel. That God responded to Moshe's request. that Moshe wanted that his voice should be loud, that everybody should hear it, God amplified his voice that everybody should hear it. The same like before, that he answered about the fire. So big koil doesn't mean in voice, it means about his voice, that his voice should be able to be heard by everybody. This concludes the Chumash for Thursday, the fifth Torah reading of Parshas Yisro.